Today we're together with Rachel Carlson, whom we met in France at a castle, actually, in Normandy. And Rachel, to jump right into it, then you have been arranging some Worldschool pop-ups for other people who travel. I would actually love to hear how that started in your life.
Fantastic. Yeah. So happy to be here, guys. I've been looking forward to this. I've got 3 kids and we started full-time travels with them. I believe they were about 8, 11, and 13. And our first year was awesome. Like we had so much to do, so much to see. And then as the kids started getting into adolescence, they're like, we're not completely happy with this. And I was like, oh, I'm completely happy. So what's up with you? And it turns out that they really needed more time to have autonomy, of course, like go off on their own, choose to stay home for a day. But a big piece of the puzzle was peers because their peers we'd settled in a couple different states. So they had friends in Wisconsin, Hawaii, and Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. And we weren't always in those areas. So they were looking for peers that they could hang out with who understood them. And we just decided, you know what? We're not the only ones out there who are having this issue. There are a lot of families who say, oh, we were traveling with our kids and then we hit teen years and we had to stop. And I was like, oh, we worked so hard to get to this point where we could be traveling and, to stop at this, it was just so frustrating. So I said, tell you what, we've got some friends, World School friends, who in 2021 decided to buy a home base where they could Airbnb it when they weren't there and also be in an area that was up and coming. And this is in Bentonville, Arkansas, which is in the middle of the U.S. I never had any desire to go to Arkansas before, but it's a beautiful nature area, lots of bike trails, really fine museums, good food, good breweries. So he said, you know what, we're coming for a month. And then let's see if anyone else wants to come. So I just put feelers out there and said, all right, anybody in the US right now who wants to come, there's some campgrounds, there's, plenty to do with the kids, lakes, hikes, like I said, museums. And we had 8 families show up. I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what we needed. Within a day, the kids said, oh, we have to do this again. And the pop-up was for a week. So we just planned activities for that week so that nobody was going to be bored. There was plenty to do. And we made the best friends. And you would not believe, even with just the short week time period, we were just able to jump into friendship because all of us were living outside of the box already. Like we all stepped away from what does life normally look like for us and for our children. And to meet people at that level, it was like we could just dive into whatever conversation we wanted. We didn't need to chit chat about, oh, what's the weather like? And what do you do for a living? Like nobody cared. We're just like, oh, you're doing cool stuff with your family. Tell me more about that. So that's where this all stemmed from. It was from my kids' need to meet other peers. But what I learned is I also need to be around like-minded people. So it just took off from there. We offered another one in August of that year. And all of a sudden we're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get people connected. We all need each other.
Oh, yes. And that's actually why we're in the UK right now. No, we're in the UK because the kids want to go here and we wanted to go here. But the people we are visiting, some of them we met 1 week, 4 years ago and became super close friends with. And right now we are in our van, parked outside their home where they are for half a year.
Just to be specific, one of the families here we've known for like 10, 12 years. They're from
Absolutely.
Copenhagen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happen to be from where we come from.
Oh, yes. Rachel, if we go even further back, why did you start to travel with your family? What was the changing point? I know there isn't one specific, and I sometimes hate the question myself. So what was the defining point that made you choose this lifestyle? I know there might not be one specific, but if you can take us along on your journey of how you started to live this life.
Okay, I'll briefly put it together. My husband and I met when I was 18, and we found out that we really enjoyed traveling. So we did not get married for 5 more years and didn't have children for another 5 years after. So we had 10 years of experience with each other where we would work positions where we could book our time into chunks. And then not book ourselves and go travel. So we did lots and lots of traveling before we had children. And then, of course, when we had kids, people said, oh, well, you'll settle down. And I thought, what? Like, this is what we love. When our kids also like to know what we love. And so as we started adding children, we just continued traveling. However, we had a home base in Wisconsin in the US. So this is in the northern area. Winters are cold. Sometimes the springs are long and dreary. And we always found that we really needed to be somewhere sunny for at least part of the winter, just to keep us going. Like you hit that seasonal affective disorder and, the winters were long. So each winter we would try to get away for a while with the kids. We would pull them out of school. So I should say they were all in public schools for quite a while. But it was still difficult to leave the house. What if the furnace stops working? What if they can't plow our driveway while we're gone? And it was just one of those, we realized the house was holding us back. Like we would go longer, but we had the house, or we would want more travel funds. But guess what? We need a new roof and a new well and new windows and new insulation. And though we loved the house, it was fantastic. We had a great community. We just knew it wasn't for us. So people talk about the American dream, like, you become successful and you have enough money to buy a home and create your life. And we did all of that and it was wonderful. But something was nagging at us that this isn't what we want. This is maybe what somebody else wants, but this house is impeding our travels and it's impeding what we want to do, like have more freedom, have more ability to be spontaneous. So we sold that house in 2014. And from there, we lived in the US and still had the kids in public school. So 2 years in Hawaii and 2 years in South Carolina. And again, we rebuilt our community. We found our friends. We had a wonderful time. Kids had wonderful peer groups and plenty to do. And one day, my husband's like, we're paying for fully furnished rental. We could be any rental anywhere. So we'd already been working online since 2014. So that was like the aha moment. Like, oh, of course, we just need an internet connection and we can continue doing what we're doing. The kids were in public school, so I was comfortable pulling them out. Let's just try a year. Let's see how homeschooling goes. And in fact, we jumped right into unschooling. I'm a former educator and I had done lots of research on unschooling. And of course, Peter Gray, who you guys have talked to, and a lot of influential people in that field. And I said, you know what? It's a year. We can just try this for a year and see how it goes. So the kids were just accustomed to traveling. We were always, the oddball family, like, oh, here, meet this new family in our community. I said, yeah, good to meet you. We're going to be in Namibia next week. So I'll catch up with you. They're like, what? Like, you just do that? Yeah. I'm like, yes, we do that. And so now we're not the oddballs anymore. Like, oh, you've been there? Cool. Tell me about it. So yeah, I think a lot of it was just, we kind of did it in steps. We sold off our belongings first. We sold off the house. We didn't have a plan. We ended up moving to Hawaii, which was fantastic. And then, like I said, we just jumped right in, and that was 2018. So we're into our 6th year now of full-time travel.
Isn't it fun how everyone started in 18?
Many families did.
So many families we talked to, and so many of our friends, they did that transition to full-time in 18.
Wow.
Including ourselves.
Yeah.
Same story, you take the baby steps and okay. Maybe it's not very interesting.
It is. I find it. Yeah.
Have we ever met someone who did it in 17?
No, not yet.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
We were all
For
feeling that.
people out there having a little difficulties to turn back the time to start full time.
Okay, you
traveling,
can't do it.
It's never too late. No, a fun thing you mentioned about the house holding you back. I remember in the start when we took on vacations, we didn't live in a house that was Airbnb style, where everything was fancy. We had small kids and we just...
And an old house.
And we just couldn't rent it out. It would take a lot of work in the start of our travels. And I remember the dragging feeling of coming home again, because now the house had stood vacant for 2 or 3 weeks and the garden would be overgrown and stuff like that. So even the idea of leaving the house could be oh no, when I come back, there's a lot of work. So I remember how freeing it was to say goodbye to the house, but also...
But we did do it.
Yeah, later when we were more comfortable with it, not in the young the early years?
No. But I mean, we did do the transition, saying someone would live here.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
cleaned it
really
up
sure
and
someone would.
took some pictures, and it worked. We did
That
lots of so we did this. We put it on Airbnb, and if someone would book it, we would go on vacation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because we
perfect.
didn't have the funds to do anything besides Monday to Friday, except if something extra would come in at that point,
Yeah.
because I didn't work and we had all this many kids. And
I was moving ahead to a point which I will go to, which is, but I also remember the fear I had before pulling the plug. I was afraid if I couldn't make it. I know it's on your story. I can hear that your husband already had worked online for 4 years, so he was used to making money online. I wasn't, so I was terrified if I could support the family. And then the whole idea of selling the house and could we ever find a house so good and stuff like that. Was there any fear in your life in that period, and how did you work with it if there were?
So before we sold the house, Lance was working at a software company, and it was a really great position. He had great vacation and incentives, but again, wasn't happy and wanted to be doing his own thing. So yeah, I mean, it came in stages. There were definitely times when we had to face those fears. So in 2014, we both sold the house and gave up the good job, which also in the US means you're giving up your health care. So it wasn't necessarily a fear on my side, but there were a lot of people in our family and friend circle that were very concerned for us. Like, what's going to happen if this goes wrong? Or what is, they had all these questions. What are you going to do for healthcare? What about the kids? Schools in Hawaii aren't very good. So they had all these questions, of course, which come from a place of love, but it also comes from a place of fear, which weren't necessarily my fears, but it's hard to hear other people's input and then not take that into consideration. So yeah, I mean, we just had to take the leap of faith at that point, and both of us started working online, and that all went well. But I think the turning point for us was, well, if we try this and it doesn't work, well, we can always come back. There will be another house for sale. There will be another place in this community for us. We were surrounded by really, really lovely neighbors and other families who love us, and we love them. And we could always go back. So once I realized this is not 100% all in or all out, like we can just go try it. And if it doesn't work, so what? It doesn't mean we were unsuccessful or a failure. It just wasn't the right thing for our family at the time. So when I realized, like, don't put so much importance on it, we can just go back. And that was the same thing when we left Hawaii, and it was the same thing when we left Hilton Head. Like, if it doesn't work, well, we just switch directions. I mean, we're not tied to this forever and ever. And I think it's how society makes us feel when we make big choices, that it's do or die, and we don't want you to die. So be really, really careful about what you do.
yeah, and there's this illusion that you need the stability because that is what will give you the success in the end. So you need the kids to go through all the years in the school, and you need to have one house and pay the mortgage, and then in the end you'll be able to retire. And you need all this, and if you do it, and if you don't stop, and you keep your streak, then you're in the good, then you're okay, then you're safe. But it's just an illusion. Loads of things could happen, even along that path that none of us are living. I think when we sold the house, what is that called? Rented it out the first year. So in 2018, when we also joined the club of full time, we said, okay, let's do this for a year. So we rent out the house, and after a year, we can come back. We can come back to the same house. Even your job was open to take you back after a year. And that was the same feeling. We can just go back if we don't like it. And there was no way we were going back after a year. And right now, I'm so relieved we sold that house. I really don't need to. I even have trouble maintaining this little van. I just don't really feel like doing the maintenance things. Imagine having a house, like with a roof, and what's that thing called where the rain goes?
The drain,
it's always a little broken, and you have to remove the leaves. And man, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I really don't. But can I ask you, Rachel, do you sometimes miss having a house?
So I thought I did. And we just did a house sit in June of this year for 1 month for some retired friends of ours. They went to Europe and they asked if we would watch their house for them. And we said, oh yeah, we would love to do that. Great. I mean, summertime rent is high. Let's give us a whole month to just settle, be part of that community, feel what that feels like. And the things that I miss about being in a stable community is having pets, having a garden, and having access to like team sports, drama clubs, musical groups for the kids. But one of the big things was having a garden. And, well, these guys had a garden and it was beautiful. All the different flowers, everything was coming into bloom at different times. You know, this one would die back and that one would pop in. And then they also had vegetables and herbs. And I was so excited, like, oh, we'll take care of the garden for them. And they're in a drought. So we had to time our watering so that the city had an ordinance. You could only water on even or odd days, depending on your street address. You could only water at certain times on those days. I was chasing rabbits out of the garden. We were weeding all the time. I was like, I don't think I miss gardening. You know, it's the maintenance of it. Now, I love having the herbs. I love having the vegetables, fresh vegetables, but I can do that at a farmer's market. I can do that at a pick your own garden. So that was kind of an eye opener for me. And then at the same time, there was also road construction on their street. They're getting curb and gutter put in. Like, oh yeah, sometimes you don't have choices, and you know what the noise level is at your house, and whoever's in the neighborhood has to pay for that curb and gutter. And it just made me realize, oh, and their water heater went out while we were there. So they got a new water heater while they were away. And like, I don't miss this at all. It's big. You have to clean it. Like, I like tinier places. I mean, not cramped. We typically rent maybe a 1-bedroom place we have 4 of us now. So the oldest is out of our household. And when you arrive at an Airbnb, it's already clean for you. We straighten up before we leave, but we've paid a cleaning fee. So we're not mopping and scrubbing or anything of that sort. It looks nice. You know, we wipe out the fridge, but like having a whole house and doing so funny. I'm so spoiled, I guess. Like I had to clean it during.
We were exactly the same. It's
like
exactly
you're trying
the
to
same.
scrub the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So I don't miss having
us. No, but I think you're still doing this 1 month, more or less, in each place you go.
So we are adapting it. So I really like the 1 month strategy because it gives us a little more time to get to know the actual location around us. It gives us a monthly discount on the rental. It ends up, I think probably 3 weeks would be our sweet spot with, you know, getting to a new area, getting really excited. What else is here? What can we go see? Where are we going to do our grocery shopping? What are the markets like? But with my 2 younger kids, they still feel like 3 or 4 weeks is too long. They want to be on the move all the time. 3 nights, 4 nights, 7 nights. I'm like, oh my God, you guys, we do it now and then to keep, you know, of course, like they have a say in what we're doing as well. So we're all cooperating with each other. And so when we have periods of travel like that, though, it also means that I want to be out of the house more and I want to be going and doing and seeing because we only have 3 nights here. So we got to go squeeze it all in. And then we have 4 nights in the next place. We've got to squeeze it in. And then all those memories blur together for me. Like I look back at some of our pictures and I know we were in Turkey, but I don't know if that was Kusadasi or Kos or, you know, where those ruins were. They were super cool and we loved it. But I feel like traveling a little more slowly is more of my speed. And I know people stay longer than 1 month too. But I think at this point, really like having change of scenery, change of activities, and it still gives us new things to experience. Like now we need to figure out this bus system. Now we need to figure out, you know, like I said, the groceries. I'm very particular about where I shop, and I like to know, oh, good produce over here and good meats over there. So yeah, it just, I like having new inputs. And like I said, the kids, they would do 2 or 3 places a week if they could. So we're kind of compromising with all of our
maybe
desires.
they wouldn't if you were doing it, because we're like in the opposite of that at the moment. We've been basically on a road trip since February 1st. And our longest stay was our 2 consecutive weeks at the castle where we met you.
Oh, yes.
And beside that, we've been just moving around. Did we do 2 weeks plus 1 day maybe in Sweden? But
Yeah.
that's
Oh.
like our personal record for the past 6 months, and we're really tiring out. Like, wow, would I imagine being in one place for a month so that I didn't have that scarcity feeling? I gotta do it today because next week I'm not here. Tomorrow I'm not here. And I have to see that cathedral, and we have to try that water park, and
Right.
we have to go to a real English pub because we're moving. So the sweet spot, I usually say for us, the sweet spot is the fact that we can change it. If we feel
Right.
like staying in a place for a month, we can do that. And if we feel like moving fast, we can do that. Right now, I think you said before that you thought you missed having a house because you thought you missed having a garden, and then you had a garden and you realized, oh no. So I sometimes think that I miss having a house, but I'm arriving at a point where I realize what I miss is having a little more time in each place.
Yeah.
I think that's what I miss because we simply move too fast, and we've been doing it for the 5 years, except for some of the lockdowns. We've really been moving fast.
A wonderful thing about becoming a traveler is also revisiting your own city or neighborhood. Um, for me, when we have returned to Copenhagen in the last 5 years, I have actually seen more of Copenhagen and more
Right.
beautiful spots in Copenhagen than I did while living there for 20 years. And right now we're in the UK, and we just came from some friends, and we talked to him about, oh, we will go see Stonehenge. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, I've never seen it. And I was
Yeah.
it's like, so, and it's the classical feeling of, I have all the time in the world. I can see Stonehenge next week. And I was just like, but it's Stonehenge. Come on.
But
Yeah.
I think I'm on Rachel's team with the 1 month thing.
Yeah.
That you would still go see Stonehenge because you are leaving in a month, but you would shop in the same supermarket twice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Absolutely.
thing. The time that goes into what about the buses and what gas station can I fit my big van into? Where can we actually park and sleep legally? And where can I get some gluten-free bread? And all these things, they just absorb so much time. And it's fun. It's part of the
Yes.
fun to come to a new place and figure everything out. But in a way, to do it twice a week, it's overdoing it, I think.
But Rachel, for the people listening to two families full-time traveling in 2018, it can maybe be a little overwhelming. And if you sit there with the dream of traveling, you can maybe listen to us and say, how can I ever reach that point? That is my dream. And I am pretty sure you have been asked this by many, many people you have met. So what is your advice to people who wants to go travel? What would you advise people who dream of this?
I think a lot of people are waiting for the right moment. If I just had this wrapped up first, or if I just had that taken care of so I felt more comfortable. And I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, like, we don't know how much time we have. We do know that our children are only children for so many years. They will be adults at some point. We cannot stop that, nor would we want to, but you only have so many years with your kids. So my advice is make it happen sooner rather than pushing it off. And it's scary. It takes a leap of faith. It doesn't just happen. I mean, some people might choose spontaneously, but there's a lot of organizing in the background. There's a lot of fears that need to be faced. But I don't know. We kind of did ours in pieces. Like, we got rid of the house and the job at the same time. And then we started the homeschooling and full-time traveling 4 years after that. So we did ours in bits and pieces. We didn't even know that was the direction we were heading. But I think, just there is a little bit of urgency that, sometimes you need that little push to just start. And you can start small. You don't have to start full-time. Whatever you can squeeze in, even if it's just going to a local campground, like going and seeing things like Stonehenge in your backyard that you haven't taken the time to do yet, because these are experiences for your family to have together. So maybe a little bit of baby stepping. I think also because we meet so many families through the Worldschool Pop-Up Hub, that meeting other people who are doing this and realizing, oh, they did that completely different than this family. And they're also completely different from the other two families I talked to. And honestly, we've met, oh my gosh, I would say close to 200 Worldschool families at this point. And none of them are doing this the same way. Like, you got to figure out your own group. You have to figure out what feels comfortable for your family, what works for your kids, and don't have a picture in your head like, these are the 6 steps that I need to complete to make my world school journey happen. Because your steps are going to be different than someone else's. We have people who are retired traveling. We have people with 2 full-time working parents traveling. We have people who are on disability and they're traveling, or that they're a single parent receiving governmental funds and they're still traveling. So, I mean, all of these lifestyles are so different individually from one to the next, but all the goals are the same. That there was something in the traditional lifestyle that was built for us that didn't feel right. There's more for me out there, and I want to jump in and explore that. So even though you can look at all these different families and pick up bits and pieces of information from each one of them, which is great because it gives you more tools in your belt and more strategies that you can use, it still comes down to individually figuring out what works for each family. Because I think there's not a cut and dried, this is the perfect way to do it.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I think you're completely right. Just go find your own way. But also so obviously we also meet a lot of people who say, oh, I dream of doing what you do, but this, that, and the other. And I think maybe they don't. I mean, you can look at something and see looks interesting and maybe fun and realize, but I wouldn't do it, which is perfectly okay. You can be inspired by it and maybe take your vacation days, do something different with them, or just take 3 months out and do a road trip and come back. It doesn't have to all be. I think a lot of people who say they dream about this life, actually, maybe they don't, because if they did, they might, have worked a little bit harder for it and faced those fears and let go of that house. And
Yeah, and we actually have friends who we visit every time we leave Denmark. Wonderful, wonderful friends. We love them a lot. And they're like right on the border to Germany. So when we drive out of Denmark, we stop by them. And there, the husband, he always says, when around when we leave, he says, I love having you as friends. It's so wonderful to have someone in our life who do stuff totally different. And I can see that
I want to keep my house. I want to keep my job.
And he
I would
just
stay here.
For him, he likes the subtle life. That's more for him. But in the back of people's mind, it's pondering. Oh, travel full time, and it's like a dream or an escapism dream you can have of saying, I want to live totally different. But he actually doesn't. And as Cecilia says, I think some people maybe have it as a dream, but when they hear all the ups and downs, then because it's not all roses, it's also
Right.
sometimes, we thought we should drive 3 hours, but it actually took 7, and we don't have an Airbnb tonight. Where are we going to sleep? And everybody is tired and drained, and it can be really difficult to be diplomatic when you're drained and speak nice to each other. That's part of it as well.
Or
Absolutely.
you can have a plane ticket or 3 lined up and a child with a broken bone.
Yes, that happens.
It's not easy necessarily. But I think another important, if we're in the advice business right now, an important piece of advice, maybe for everyone, but if you want to do this leap of faith, one thing is the fear, working with how to handle fear and worry. But another thing is regrets. Those who I've met who give up, they also have this filter of regret going on all the time. I'd rather be in my house than this very late night where I can't find parking, or, oh, I should never have done this. I should have done that instead. So I think all of the world schoolers that I've met, they have this strategy of never regretting anything and never really just trusting the process, not never trusting, but they do trust the process. They trust, okay, I'm here for some reason. I will learn something. This is part of the adventure, even when it's a challenge, like an emergency, physically, like medical one, or we've had so many. Yeah, you have stories and we have stories about when it's not fun. But what you don't do in that situation is to regret and say, oh, I wish I'd stayed home in my comfortable house. Because once you start doing that, it's just, will just unravel the whole, I don't know,
Pleasure
balance.
of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
I'd
I'm
like to
done with advising.
Yes.
let me add to the regret thing though, because I think for us also, we had the opportunity to jump into full-time travel, and I would have regretted not taking that chance when it was given to us. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's maybe the side of regret that gave me the push. Like, we can do this. We've got, we're stable enough. Our kids are willing, everything is lining up for us. And actually, a lot of our travels, the way we roll is that whatever lines up easiest, that's the direction we take. And we've been shut down before. And then we're like, oh, well, there'll be another path. And the more and more we practice this, it is trusting the process. And it's also learning that something is going to open for us and it will be okay. Whatever it is, it's going to be fine. And I've really learned to trust my gut instincts more and more as we've been on this long. Like, I'm way more comfortable now than I was 5 years ago. I was still in that what if phase, and is this going to work? And now we hit a roadblock and, well, we find our way around it. And guess what? We found our way around another one and we did it again and again. So like, we're also
And
building
on that way around it, there's something fun, right? Don't you have that experience? So there's a roadblock and now I have to do a detour. But wow, there's a castle or a friend or amazing restaurant or a view or whatever, something like, oh, I would never have been here had it not been for that roadblock. And I'm just so happy to be here. I think that happens a lot to us when we think that something fails, then it's just, we're just being pushed towards something really great.
Yeah. Rachel, we spent a month together on this castle in Normandy, where you had arranged both a pop-up and and a co-living experience, and I'm very grateful you did that. It was
fun.
It was super fun, and it was so wonderful to see our teens hanging out and talking for a month. And what it also gives is friends in all places of the world, and it can almost feel stressful because there's so many people I would like to go visit now. And I'm just thinking about you sitting
I
in
ruined
place.
you.
But you have been arranging these pop-ups. I'm just thinking, oh man, there must be so many people you have want to see but can't fit in. So how are you choosing your travels? You said that you're choosing the most easy path. Can you put some more words to it?
Sure. So the way we choose our travels, rewind a few years, Lance and I would make the decisions. We were coming from Wisconsin. We loved beaches and sunshine and seawater and all of that. So a lot of our travels were in the Caribbean or in Hawaii or North Island of New Zealand. And as the kids have aged, they want more input, of course. So we've let them, my daughter was big about visiting Turkey. And I mean, I'm happy to go anywhere for the most part. And before I know it, she's written like a 10-page document of all the places she wanted to visit in Turkey. And we looked at this like, that would take about 300 days. Like, we can get 90, but 300 is going to take some coordination. Plus, we have a castle to go visit. So, now with the kids, they have a pretty big push on what they want to get out of the travels too. So like the big draw with Turkey was she wanted to see ruins because she had heard someone else talk about them. And I mean, the amount of ruins there was just incredible. So, I mean, it was, I talked before about like boosting our confidence. Like here we followed her plan. I mean, of course we had to scale it down and pick and choose what was going to make the cut. But we all went and we all enjoyed the things that she picked out for us to do. And then as far as our upcoming travels this year, so next month we fly to Tokyo. My younger kids love big cities. So whenever we can put a big city into the plan, they are 100% in. I don't love big cities. It's okay for me to visit. But what I've learned is as we've added more larger cities, so like, I guess in the last year and a half, we've been in Mexico City and Denver, New York City, Washington, D.C., London, Istanbul. We were in Florence, not too big, Paris. Like we've just been doing big city after big city with lots of neat stuff in between. But what I've learned is that I actually like big cities a bit. Hustle and bustle all the time. And that's the most beautiful thing is I'm learning alongside them. So we'll be going to Tokyo and then over to Seoul, South Korea. And we'll be staying in Southeast Asia then for at least the end of the year, probably half of next year as well. But we have good friends in Kuala Lumpur. And this friend, this is Siming, and who also has many Worldschool friends in collaboration with us. So now we're like, oh, well, we could do a pop-up in Kuala Lumpur and bring everyone to us. So now we know like which families we're going to see again, and they might follow us for a little bit, and then we split off, and then we re-meet up. And it's made our travels, like it's enriched our travel so much because now we never feel lonely. Like we always know, oh, well, we're not saying goodbye. We're going to see you in a couple months, or, I think in about a year, we'll swing through this area again and see you again. So your question was following the path of least resistance. There's definitely a lot less resistance when we have friends on the horizon that everyone goes see people that we love and adore. It just makes everything more exciting, and we always have something to look forward to. And with the kids, we've spent some time on the Asian side of Turkey. So they've been to the Asian continent, but we really want to experience more of the culture there. So I think we'll have about close to a year in that area, maybe longer. And we'll just see how it goes. We can't plan, certainly out forever, but this will get us over there. And then once we're there, it's fairly easy to just move from country to country. And super looking forward to it. So it's fresh for all of us.
Yeah. The biggest problem with children in my mind is that they grow older and move away from the family. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I do not like that fact.
No.
And when we started our travels, our grown-up daughter was living together with her boyfriend, and her choice was kind of like, so you want to live together with your boyfriend, whom you're still together with 5 years after? Or do you want to travel with mom and dad? So we luckily have found a way where they come and visit us when we know we are placed longer. And this winter, we are actually traveling to meet them as they are going on an 8 or 9 months world travel. And we will meet up with them in Mexico. And I just
maybe Mexico.
to be decided. But
with a pencil until you buy the plane ticket. Yeah.
Right.
But I know your oldest has also transitioned into moving away from home. And how are you handling that? I found it terrible.
I cried for a month.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I thought I was 100% prepared. So this kid at age probably 14. Oh, and his name's Jasper. So we got Jasper and Jesper, which tickles me. So about age 14, he wanted to be emancipated. He was done with the family. He knew it all. He was ready to be on his own. And honestly, the kid could figure things out. If he had to be on his own, he would have been 100% fine. So fast forward a little bit, of course, having the pop-ups cruise around was fantastic and everyone was making friends, but he's very driven and decided he wanted a high school diploma and wanted to settle. And he thought, I want to settle for 3 to 5 years. So we got him set up with my in-laws in Wisconsin and enrolled in high school. So he just graduated last month. He didn't want the diploma that I was writing as a homeschooler. He wanted an actual diploma from high school. And so he did that this past year, and he, excelled. He didn't love it. His original idea of staying 3 to 5 years was out the window after a couple months. He's like, oh no, this is not what I want. It's like me showing up in that house. Oh, maybe I miss the garden. oh
Yeah.
no, that's not what I'm missing. Yeah. So, I mean, it gives us
Yeah.
the chance to sit with, some of these desires like, oh, I miss a garden. Well, what is it I'm actually missing? It's not the gardening. It's just the fresh produce and, it's time outdoors. So, for him now, he's looking at traveling. He's already done a couple road trips in the US and then he will be going international. We don't quite know when. So he's also added a girlfriend, which is lovely. And that, I mean, not, I don't want to say it complicates things, but it gives you more things to consider as you're making your plans. So he's looking at working in New Zealand because you can get a young person's work visa up to age 26. And he's also looking at traveling. He loves London and he thought, oh, that's a good stepping stone. And then I'll get into Europe and then I'll just go to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could travel to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. I'm like, but if anyone's going to figure it out, you will. And since he's said that, we have been looking at it like, oh my gosh, these places are gorgeous. And, I always like finding that, something that hasn't been uncovered yet. And so now we're considering when we leave Southeast Asia, maybe we'll go through Sri Lanka and then India and then up into those areas too. And who knows, we might meet up with him again. But all right, so rewind, he moved out at 17 and a half. So I kind of felt that was a bit of a triumph on my part that I was able to keep him in our house that long because he wanted to be gone.
That was not a house.
Yeah. Household. Yeah. What do you even say?
Yeah,
But
well, I get it.
he really wanted to transition earlier than that. So he transitioned out at 17 and a half and we knew it was happening. We knew for a long time. And I thought, okay, I'm very well prepared for this, but holy, you're not. It doesn't, it's coming, but you can't prepare. And of course it just means that we have a very strong bond and the more you love, the more it hurts and it's going to hurt, but it's also super exciting to watch these humans step into adulthood and make some of their first adult decisions and really advocate for themselves. So of course I wouldn't want to hold him back at all. And I love the stage he's at. Would I love it if he lived with us again and traveled with us? Oh my gosh, sign me up right away. Like I will pay your way. You just come with us. I'll feed you. I'll clothe you. But that's not necessarily in his plans. He said, well, maybe I'll stop in Asia and find you guys over there. And well, sure. There's always an open door and he knows that and we know that. But like you said, it is hard to give them up, which is exactly what we're preparing to do. And I don't know how you can just be at peace. I mean, it was a peaceful transition, of course, but to just not feel the hurt and it's closing of a chapter in our lives. Like we are never going to be living full time together again. And though we'll see each other and visit each other. Okay, never.
I mean, it can happen.
Yeah. And one thing I found that is really wonderful, one thing I found that is really wonderful about traveling with having our grown-up is if I look back at the relationship I have with my parents, and I mean, we lived half an hour maximum in a car away from them when I lived in Denmark. What ended to
When you were young.
When I was young, yeah. What ended up happening was I visited them. So it was we didn't live together. It was just a visit. And it's totally different way of spending time together now when our grown-up daughter come and stay with us because we live together for a week, a long weekend, maybe two. And it's just deeper in another way that you have these talks over the breakfast and then later you continue it over dinner. And it's the same thing I like about the co-living and the pop-up situation where you're together for longer time. Is that you have this, it doesn't need to be rushed to be together and bond. It can happen slowly during the day.
I think also when you make these visits, especially with the young people, they come back for like an afternoon. The mind is not totally there. And, there could come a text message, oh, we're going to this park with beer. Are you coming? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm coming. It's more casual, it's less important, and it's less committed. Whereas the way we spend time together now with our daughter and son-in-law is we're here together now and we have this time and plane ticket is in 10 days. So everyone agreed that now we make it work for 10 days or 3 days or whatever days. And that makes it more intense. And I really prefer that. So we prioritize. Now it's about this.
Yes,
Yeah, I like that. But I would like a little more of it, though.
of
I'm
course.
not completely happy with going too long without seeing her. I don't like that.
Oh no! And the day grandchildren come,
Oh,
so
shit.
life
That's
will
gonna be
change.
complicated.
Life will change.
We will keep traveling,
We will
but I
keep.
just don't know
We
how.
need to
I
spend time
don't
with
know
them.
how. But you know what? We might end up having grandchildren on like 4 different continents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just saying.
Then it would
That could
be a
happen.
good way to travel.
That could easily happen, couldn't it? So
Yes.
let's just take what's now
Yeah.
and make the best of that. And when grandchildren are added. So we're in a situation, our daughter is in her mid-20s. I mean, it will not be 10 years from now.
Oh no!
No. So this is on the horizon.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm trying not to pressure her too much. No,
No, I don't think it.
no. I know. I would love
Okay.
to talk a little about the transition you experienced with your kids, moving them from normal school to homeschool to unschool
To travel.
to travel
School.
world school. Can you what changed? Have they changed, and what have you seen as a parent happen?
Okay, so my university degree is in secondary education for mathematics. So I've been in school, I went to school more, started teaching in the schools. I'm a huge advocate of public education, especially for inner cities. There's a lot that can be done via schooling. However, I'd also been interested in unschooling, like I had mentioned. So when our kids were in public schools, I think I said that Hawaii public schools are not necessarily academically challenging. And you get that where there's better school districts in certain areas and, school districts that aren't as good in others. And people were concerned about our kids. Well, schools aren't so good there. Are you going to put the kids in a private school? I'm like, no, I believe in public schools. And what we want for our kids is to be part of the community. We want them to meet the neighbors. We want them to, be part of the ukulele club and, all of the school fun things. And it was, I think at that point where I realized I don't necessarily need to rely on the school to teach my children, that I'm also able to educate my kids. And they can just go to this school here and have a fun experience. And if they're missing out on something, we'll just adapt that at home and make sure that they're exposed and learn what they need to learn for adulthood. And when we decided to move to full-time travel, it was kind of a no-brainer. Like our oldest was an 8th grader. So in the US, middle school is typically 6th to 8th grade, and then high school is 9th to 12th grade. So usually once kids get into high school, then you need to keep better records of what they're learning. And then you put it on a transcript, which then turns into a diploma. But he was in 8th grade when we started. And I said, you know what? I really don't have any record keeping I need to do. And I should just say as an aside, we are residents of Wisconsin, which the homeschool laws vary state to state. So some states you have to record attendance and have a portfolio and state testing and those things. Wisconsin does not have that. So for us, we didn't really need to create all these things that we had to turn in and prove what we were learning. So I said, let's just try unschooling for a year. And what we realized is that, of course, you're learning every day. Okay, we just had Learn Nothing Day. Like, yeah, good luck with that. And as we're traveling, we're
Maybe
visiting.
if you're sedated.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Oh, no, sorry.
Right. But you jump into everyday life when you're exploring and you're going to state parks and you're, talking to people on the beach. And, now you go and visit Uncle John and you hear his perspective on things. And then you go to the national park. And like, there's just no way to hold back learning. All the stuff around us was changing all the time. Like, oh, what's this? What's that? How is it connected? And it was just really beautiful to watch as an adult because the kids engaged as much as they wanted to. And nothing was forced or pressured. I wasn't giving them, here's your scavenger hunt. You have to finish this. Or why don't, let's talk about this and make sure you learn something. typically I say to them like, oh, here's some signs. Why don't you guys go read that and check it out? And I'll tell them, go learn that. And, but I don't have any quizzing or, there's no pressure to it. We're here. This is interesting and new for us. Let's just see what it has to say. And what I've noticed with them is now they're starting to be drawn to things that interest them. So like with my daughter and the ruins in Turkey, like, okay, well now we realize, oh, no, these ruins weren't built. They were built by the Romans, and these ruins here, came in from this other group. And, you there's so much to learn there. And when we were in Normandy, we were right by the beaches, the D-Day beaches. And I'm not a history buff, but I tell you, I was super intrigued learning about all of the D-Day history there because we were right there and looking at it. And this little bridge down the road, that was super important for the whole operation to be successful. And once you're there and learning on site, it's just so much more meaningful. And to see that transition for my kids was really amazing. And then with the oldest, he wanted to go to high school. So of course, there were some certain classes that he needed to complete. And we just got workbooks off of Amazon, and he took classes online through Arizona State University and Khan Academy. And, we got him caught up with all the academics he needed, which again, if you're interested in learning it and getting it done, it happens really quickly. You don't need to sit in a classroom for 180 days to get it done. Some of his math coursework he could get through in 1 month, just bam, 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 done. So yeah, I mean, it's trusting the process again, like trust that they're learning, trust that they're making connections. And sure, sometimes you might want to help make a connection with them and then hear their input and watch the wheels turn. But for the most part, it's a hands-off thing. Like, this is so cool that we're here. And they see me excited about learning things too. And I think it's just a gift to give them that freedom to learn as they want to, or take a day off as they need to. I give my kids days off all the time. Like, I need a day off now and then. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And then the one of the processes for me that had been very interesting as a parent is the whole deschooling that happens when you start to see that stuff can happen in a different way than the normal school situation that you believe in. Well, how has that been for you?
Well, let me first touch on deschooling. And I know for a lot of people, that's like an actual process that they work through. I don't think I ever did, which is interesting because I'm trained as an educator, but I think we just jumped into unschooling and I was so willing to just be observant and we put a timeline on it. I said, okay, this is a year. Let's try this a year. It was travel for a year, homeschool for a year, unschool for that year, and see how it goes. And so I didn't really like continually question like, oh, are they learning, or shouldn't we be doing more, or are they reading enough? I guess part of it is they were reading on their own. And, I didn't feel like I needed to, give them nudges and directions I wanted them to go. So I think I kind of skipped the deschooling stage, which is interesting because I was trained as an educator. So yeah, I've had a lot of my former beliefs blown out of the water all over the place. Like even owning a home, like, oh, it's such a good investment and you're building equity and you get a tax break on the interest you're paying. Like, why wouldn't you want a home? And I think a lot of people don't see the other side of the story. Like, well, it holds you back. It means a lot of your extra expenses are going into the house instead of other things you want. You may feel pressured to furnish the whole house. And then if you want nice looking furniture or, fancy light fixtures a lot of people don't see those things. And I didn't see them necessarily until I lived it. So I would say over the course of my life, I've changed a lot of my opinions just from having new experiences. And oftentimes it's no fun because sometimes we identify with what our thoughts are. And yeah, like you said, don't say never. Yeah, I've said a lot of things that I would never do this. And guess what? Now, 10 years later, after I have more life experience, this is what feels right. So I mean, and the thing I really love about it is that I'm open to changing my mind. And I know that sitting in those places where I make those big opinion like flipping the perspective, it's uncomfortable. It's no fun to be looking back at what I thought and like, oh, I was so sheltered, or I really didn't know what I was talking about, because now I know more. But you only can do the best with what you have and what you know at the time. And so, not that I like sitting in those spaces, but I do welcome it when it happens, because I know that it's pushed me to live more authentically for me. Like, what do I want out of what can I design for the kid, and my husband, and my grown adult? Like, how can I make what we're doing feel even better, and, create a future that they can step into without the worries and without the doubts that a lot of us do. When Jasper said he wanted to go to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, I mean, there's other people in the community who would say, I've never had a passport. I've only been out of the state 2 times in my life. And even the thought of crossing the border into Canada or Mexico might be really intimidating to them. And here's a kid, he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go to this place I've never been before. I don't know anyone else who's been there. There's been plenty of people there, but just not personally. Do we have connections there? And he's just so comfortable with it. Like, wow. If when I was 18, like my choices were, am I going to go to this university or that university? Like, I just didn't realize there was more out there for me. I was just following the path of kind of how I was told to live my life. And I was doing really great at it. Like, okay, now I do school. Now I do more school. And I just love that these guys are not like narrow-minded with what's available to them, that it could be anything. And I know that they have the skills to go out there and do that. And to me, that's like the number one best benefit of what we've done over these last 5 years, that my kids have that confidence in themselves. They've seen us sort out problem after problem. I mean, not that the whole world schooling is problematic, but we were continually on the road during COVID. That was a problem. We had flights canceled. We had, trip after trip after trip. We had to stop, regroup, find the next way forward. And we stayed on the road that whole time and found rentals and still kept exploring. So the kids who've seen us through tough times, and they're like, oh, well, if you persevere, something will line up. And eventually something super easy lines up. You're like, oh, this is what we were waiting for. That's why there were so many closed doors. Okay, that makes sense now. And so having my kids walking to adulthood with that sort of attitude is really inspiring to me. And I certainly hope that they're inspiring to others too, because I think a lot of us have just taken life's goals at face value. And, we can make our own goals. We can design our own lives. And yeah,
we can come up
love
with new ones.
Yes.
I think that's another like game changer. We don't have to be world schoolers for the rest of our lives, just as we didn't have to stay in our houses and keep our jobs. And, we will change. I suppose we will change direction many times. Maybe not core values, but like life strategy. This is what we're doing now. That will probably change a few times. And I like to also, we have a son who's 17 and a half. And lots of people talk to him about adulthood, because apparently when you're 18, you're adult. And and he's like, what am I going to do with that? And first of all, we told him, it's an arbitrary number. You just do life and, in whatever way you want, whenever you're ready for whatever step, then you take it and we'll be behind you. But we also tell him this imaginary idea that at this point in life, you have to choose what you want to do for the rest of your life. It's just a weird idea, choose what feels right, choose a path of not too much resistance, choose what makes your stomach tickle a little bit, choose what seems interesting, go where there's energy, power, fun, and that's the right thing and will always be the right thing to do. And I like giving them that perspective instead of trying to help them become a dentist or a firefighter or whatever arbitrary life goal thing. We talk a lot about unschooling on the podcast, but with you, obviously, we talk a lot about traveling but you said I give my children days off, which was for me a little puzzling as an unschool mom, because I don't demand. So we don't have days on and off because from my perspective, unschooling is my kids can do whatever they want, always within safety and health restrictions. But you know what, you get the picture. So I wanted to ask, what does that mean?
So for us, I kind of think of an on day as days where we're out and about in the community, going to museums, maybe spending an afternoon at the beach or coffee shop or whatever is interesting in the area. And occasionally, and I think we're on the same wavelength that one of my kids is
I
like,
think we two, you and I are in agreement, but I think maybe some
Right.
listeners could get this wrong.
right,
And I wanted
Right.
you to maybe elaborate a little bit. You give them a day off. Could sound like
So-
you would get to decide what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Right. So we'll come up with a plan for the day. So let's say we're going to go to a museum in the morning and then stop at the farmer's market in the afternoon. And one of my kids would say like, you know what? I really don't want to do the farmer's market. Can I just go home? And I'll say, yeah, sure. As long as you know the way home, you have a key. Good. Sometimes they want to stay home the whole day. That's also fine. Like for a while, I think I felt that over here, we all need to go experience everything. We need to explore together all the time. But I realized that was what I wanted and not necessarily what they wanted. And especially when we had all three of them living with us. I mean, there's, personality differences and it changes, like who's getting along with who and who's under the skin of the other. And so yeah, if one of the kids takes a day off, I mean, again, they could have every day off. Well, maybe not. But, if we're out exploring and they're not interested in what we're doing as a family, they just want to sit home and chill, like that's totally fine. So I don't necessarily force them and make plans every day that they have to do. And overall, they choose to do most of what we're exploring with us. So it's not that they're going to sit home every single day. I might need to give them a nudge if that was the case. But yeah, right now that if we have a plan and someone's really not interested or is extra tired or, whatever it is, like you're a teenager, you're going to have days when you're moody and things aren't working out right and just need some space. So we let them create that space. But I would say overall, like most of our explorations that maybe they're interested in one thing during the day and then they peel off or they meet us in the afternoon and we have a meeting point and a meeting time and then we reconnect there. So that works out really nicely for our family. So they've got some flexibility. I have some flexibility and yeah.
And as I understand it, it's actually not you as such making the plan to begin with, because
Correct.
you're doing it together. So in that way, it's not you giving them a day off. It's more like everyone negotiating energy levels. And yeah, I just wanted to clear that up.
I know for many people to dip the toe and start visiting and seeing other families and people who are actually doing it is really wonderful. Both for people who start homeschooling and unschooling, but also for people who start the travels. And you have created this wonderful pop-up community. So if people want to know more about where they can find the next upcoming, then what are the homepage and what are the Facebook page and how do they find you, Rachel, and figure more out about it?
Oh, thank you. The best place to go is the website, worldschoolpopuphub.com. And of course, you can read all about like what we do, and then you can see the upcoming events. If you sign up for the newsletter, it's in the footer. Then you get newsletters I send out that highlight what's coming up, and everything's on the website. I have a Facebook and an Instagram. That's mostly just for posting pictures of what we're doing at the pop-up so that you can see, yeah, the community comes together. There's one going on in Los Angeles right now. They were out at the tidal pools yesterday. They went and saw the spaceship Endeavour at the California Science Center. So it's just like showing you the different things that we do at the pop-ups. And I should also mention that I don't host them all because anybody can do this. So I also allow other hosts to work with me, and then we create an event together that fits kind of our standardized pop-up plan. And then I do all the advertising for them, and then they get to run the event, and then their family brings the world schoolers to where they are and get to explore that area together. So I just think, there's nothing special about me other than I just took the initiative to get out there and say, look, if we want these events for our families, we need to take ownership of it and we need to put the time in. And if anybody wants to do that, I'm happy to help them get to that next step. So, yeah, and we have pop-ups all over the world. So yeah, they had CM Rape last week, Los Angeles this week. Next month, we have Madison, Wisconsin, Malasha, Georgia, and Cincinnati, Ohio. So yeah, it's super cool. So you can bump into people anywhere that you travel. And that's really what I want, that community is available wherever you choose to roam. And if you don't see something going on where you're roaming, talk to me and then we'll get something going on where you are.
Absolutely. And on that note, first of all, thank you for creating the pop-up and community we were at. We have made friends we will see and know for life. I'm sure of that. And I look forward also to when our road crosses again. And I also want to thank you for your time to talk with us today. It was a pleasure.
You're so welcome. I'm glad I could be here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.